Hello and welcome back to another video. This time it's going to be a little bit different. I will be reviewing The Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug, which... well, first of all, I suppose there's probably some things I should clear up. I really enjoyed the first Hobbit movie, Unexpected Adventure. I didn't think that it deserved the critical panning that it received, and actually, after seeing that this movie has critically been significantly better received on average than Unexpected Journey, I nearly think that it's like the expectations for the first movie were so high that it was really judged against Lord of the Rings, which of course is not really the right way to judge it. It is The Hobbit, you know? The Hobbit is very different in sort of tone and general stuff like that to what Lord of the Rings is. It's far more whimsical, fantastical, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that that's why the first movie got quite harsh, well, a relatively harsh reception, and it's nearly as if, now that that has been settled in as the par, that reviewers have been a little bit more light towards this movie, because honestly, I think there are some ridiculously glaring failures and just problems that, for me at least, make it not as good a movie as the first one. But anyway, in the review sort of thing, I'm not going to flat out call it a review. There will be a score at the end, but... well, I'll talk about scoring in a minute. Anyway, so I'll talk about the good, the bad, the actual score, of course, and then I'll have some, just post-spoiler thought, I suppose, because, of course, no spoilers in the main review, because that would be very dickish. And that said, a lot of people do already know the plot of The Hobbit. It's a pretty popular children's book, or at least, well, I suppose it kind of was. Anyway, so let's first get into the good stuff. There is plenty of good things in this movie. Overall, the first half I thought was definitely far stronger than the second. Now these points are literally in no order at all. They're just some things that come to mind that are worth mentioning. So first of all, the same cast is great. I mean, the same cast as the first movie. Martin Freeman puts on some really fantastic performances. There are especially two scenes where I think he really does knock it out of the park. However, of course, I'm not going to talk about them or what they are in this review, but overall I think he knows the character, or at least his slant on the character of Bilbo is just so good. I think he's really what sells the series of movies. I think they really wouldn't be as good if it was a different lead role. He makes them, in my opinion. Of course, some of the other characters do great jobs as always. Oh my god, I've forgotten his first name. Armitage, the guy that plays Thorin, is fantastic. Most of the dwarves are pretty good, as always. The kind of grey-haired guy is always providing the kind of logical voice of reason, and he does a very good job in counteracting some of Thorin's decisions and stuff like that. So I think overall interplay between the dwarves and the acting is quite good. I do have a problem with the overuse of Bomber, which will come in later. One little thing, Beaufort is played by a local guy. He actually... he grew up, I think, well, it's a town that's really, I think, 5 miles from where I grew up, so it was kind of cool to see him. The only problem is that his Northern Irish accent just, it's instantly noticeable for me. However, I don't really think it pulls anything away from the movie. It's just like, oh yeah, that's James Nesbitt, that's not Beaufort, but hey, whatever, I think he does a good job, so it's fair enough. In terms of acting, Evangeline Lilly plays a fantastic character by the name of Toriel. A lot of people were very worried that they're sticking a new character in. Not only are they putting a new character into The Hobbit, but it's also going to be a love interest for Legolas and one of the dwarves. This is interesting, actually. They pulled it off really well. She acted the character quite well. Too, I was sort of worried that originally all I would see is Kate from Lost. That ended up not happening. She melded into the character very well. So yeah, pleasantly surprised by how well she acted that one. So yeah, good job. Next, Benedict Cumberbatch. That guy's voice. Holy shit. Great work in Smaug. Great work on the Necromancer. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed his work in the movie. And finally, the last person we're going to mention in specific is Orlando Bloom. He's great with Legolas, actually. I think a lot of people were definitely worried that, oh, they're bringing back Legolas? What? This doesn't make sense. No, he does a great job. Legolas is definitely a Mirkwood elf, I suppose, and that means they're... well, yeah, they are a bit xenophobic in some ways, like... The old elf-dwarf thing obviously plays off as well, but there's definitely a big difference between the Mirkwood elves and Elrond's crowd, and that's played very well by the movie and very well by the actors. Thranduil's actually also quite good. I think some people had a bit of an issue with Thranduil, at least the people that I saw the movie with. I thought he was fine, and he was acted well enough, so yeah, no complaints there. Still, Legolas, great, far more the kind of character who I expected he would be in The Hobbit, and I'm very happy with that. Now, the other good thing is the combat choreography. I think it's been very good in the Hobbit franchise, or like trilogy, I guess. Now, bar one time where there is a 360 no-scope, gonna warn you, bit of a problem with that, but on the whole, it's very fluid, and especially the elves. The elves feel very deadly, and it's funny, like, this is a Warcraft channel, and nearly in some ways, the Mirkwood elves feel a little bit similar to the Warcraft 3 elves, which is kind of interesting, and maybe, you know what, maybe the Warcraft 3 elves are sort of aping off the Mirkwood elves, probably more from the books, I guess. But, yeah, overall, very good work on the combat choreography. Next, the scenery. It's fantastic, and I suppose this is as you would expect. New Zealand is a pretty beautiful country, and it's well utilised in the film. Everything looks great. So, yeah, I mean, the Lonely Mountain, Erebor, looks fantastic architecturally, very cool. Lake Town, like, okay, it's pretty decrepit, but that's the entire point, and they do a great job of that. Then also Mirkwood itself. Mirkwood is friggin' cool looking, really cool looking. There's that. So next, on the point of good things, we have Gandalf. Ian McKellen is Ian McKellen, meaning he is, as a wizard, completely infallible. Every time he's played Gandalf, he's been brilliant. This is no exception. Where the storyline takes that character, the sort of things he does, where he goes, it's all very interesting, and they are some of the highlights of the movie. They're very cool. Radagast is in there for a little bit, so it's nice to see him return. I suppose initially I was kind of unsure of Radagast, but then I felt like he did fit in quite well. So, yeah, like in terms of good, there's other good things. On the whole, the first act is, not the first act, just the first half, I guess, is dead solid. It does a good job, and the overall quality of things is great. Now, this is me doing no spoilers. I could probably talk about more good things without spoilers, but I'll talk about, really, the non-spoiler issues that I'm going to talk about later on are mostly negatives, because I do have a lot of negative points to say about this movie, which, by the way, it does make me really sad, because I love The Hobbit, I love Lord of the Rings, I love Tolkien, and I just feel like there was some fundamentally stupid decisions and things that were done. So, on that point, let's move on to the bad. First of all, Bjorn, the like, shapeshifter guy. To a lot of the people I saw the movie with, he felt kind of underutilized and a little bit pointless. Now, personally, he slid in pretty decently with me. I thought he would just sort of insert into the story well, made it enough sense. I wish they sort of played the whole idea of him... No, spoiler section, whoops. Yeah, maybe, okay, he didn't have that much of a point, and he just sort of appeared randomly, and it felt a bit random, but I think it was okay, honestly. Now, next, well, I think the barrel scene. Now, this is not a spoiler because it's the scene that you've all seen in the trailers, and I won't go into any details, but here's the thing. They use a GoPro camera. I'm not joking, a fucking GoPro camera. Okay, it's maybe only 5 seconds of footage, but the way it's cut in and everything, it's terribly jarring. It just takes you right out of the whole thing. Normally we have this really, really, really great footage. Everything's fantastic quality. Okay, special effects, I'm going to say... Actually, I'll talk about them in my next point. But, yeah, this use of a GoPro camera, it nearly feels like a product placement, but it was just a kick in the balls to the entire scene. I thought it was awful. I have no idea why they did that. Also, this scene has some combat issues for me, mainly the big 360 no-scope that happens, which I am not cool with, because it just... Even just the way it was framed, it wasn't framed as... Okay, so the elf combat is ridiculously ruthless and efficient and murdery, and it looks really cool with a lot of finesse. The problem is this, like the sort of 360 no-scope and one or two other small things, they more feel like being flashy, but not really flashy in the way that it made sense, because the elves were at one of those points clearly in danger. And so yeah, that was one thing, but hey, that's a tiny thing overall, tiny. I'm just sort of mentioning it in this list of bad things because it got on my nerves a little bit. So, special effects. These are a weird one. So first of all, I'd seen the movie in 2D24, frames a second. I will, however, be seeing it in 3D 48, and really the reason I'm doing the review before I've seen the second version is because this is focusing on the movie. I don't particularly care about the effects or anything like that, but one thing I do want to say is that the quality of effects, and this is not something that's 3D specific, but the quality does vary. It varies a lot, honestly. So first of all, there are definitely one or two 3D moments, like, oh look, it's the bees, and the bees pop out into the screen and look at me, oh. But I don't like it when movies do that. I think 3D can actually be really well utilized as a tool to give enhanced depth, and it really just brings out some scenes. I think Gravity did that fantastically. That's cool, but just some of the kind of 3D specific scenes looked a little bit meh. Now there's then also the big 3D scenes, which look fantastic. And when I say big 3D scenes, I mean the big scenes that are just kind of like giant panorama would look fantastic in 3D, and from seeing the original one in 3D and in 2D, I know that they will, because they were filmed together as one movie. The problem is there are some inconsistent points. There's one point, it's a river scene, right? And it's clearly, like, the river is CGI'd, which is fine. Well, at least parts of it are CGI'd, but the river's going straight, and then it takes a bend. And there's just like kind of little, like, you know, the water hits the bend, there's a little bit of an inner curvature archy thing, which the name of which I've completely forgotten, that I should know that from geography. Anyway, so normally what happens is the water flows through, it kind of bounces off, twirls around for a little bit, goes the other direction. That's fine. Here's the problem though, it doesn't really do that, it just kind of goes straight. And it feels, there's one or two little moments like that where it just feels weird. Now, there's also another one in the same scene with a tree, right? And, well, let's just say, essentially, there's a tree, and it splits in half. That's fine. The issue is, though, when you actually look at the tree as it splits, the texture of the inside of the tree is so ridiculously low. It's really surprising how they can blow so much special effects money and then not cover their basics in some regards. It just looked really weird, and I'm going to, like, I imagine that when I see this in 48 frames a second, the little niggles and the little issues are just going to look all the worse. Because there's no, like, the way that your brain kind of compensates for some special effects things, that doesn't happen as much with 48 frames because your brain is being fed more information. So there's one thing. Now next, let's talk about humor. I think it was overused and it was often out of place. Now I get that The Hobbit is whimsical and fantastical, but I just really think that the quality of the humor kind of ranges from stuff that does totally fit. But then it moves into the realms of things that are just done because, oh, look, funnies. It's as if the director, well, yeah, the director, maybe some of the producers, or just people in general, were sitting around a table and thinking, oh, hey, this would be funny, this would be funny, this would be funny. They inserted them into the movie and didn't really think about how well they fit. I'm not going to go into specifics that much because, you know, I don't want to spoil the movie on you, obviously. But yeah, I think the overbearing use of humor is a problem. Now, I actually was, for the most part, okay with the way humor was dealt with in the first Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. I thought it was all pretty solid. You know, it was funny, and it wasn't really. I'd say the best way to do this, actually, the humor is kind of like on a bit of a curve, or a line. It's on a line, right? The line of humor that fits with the tone of the movie and The Hobbit. And that's great. It's pretty funny. It's a good line. However, there's one or two points where the humor just kind of goes like this. Boom. It spikes all the way up. Of course, I don't know if this shitty webcam will actually capture that because low frame rate, but anyway, yeah, the humor just, sometimes there are spikes way up, and it doesn't feel right. Instead of being like, this is a funny situation and the characters are funny, it feels more like the movie made this happen specifically so it should be funny. Now that's okay if you're a comedy film, but if you're a film like this which wants the humor to really just feel like it's rich and is born from the story, then just putting in things like that, I don't really think it works, actually. Now, while we are on the point of humor, I'm going to talk about Bomber. Now, Bomber is the tubby little fellow, and I'm okay with a little bomber, you know? You're going at 5 bombers an hour, you're good, whatever. There's the odd bit of bomber happens. Then there's one point in this movie where they just ramp it up for 15 minutes, you're going 50 bombers an hour, and it's just, oh, it's problems, because it's way too just blatant in your face. Look, we have a fat guy and he's heavy, and because he's heavy, he can do funnies, yeah? No, it's not funny. It's like, and when I say not funny, it's not funny because it's stupid. And there is a time when Bomber ends up, he's doing these ridiculous things because he's in a barrel and he's a bit more hefty than the other dwarves. When he's jumping around the place and his barrel gets hit by things, it's basically this giant wrecking ball of doom that takes out, I'd say 20 plus orcs. And then when he gets out of this thing, finally, okay, tiny, not story spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1... you're fucked. When it moves on to this, he is literally standing like this with two weapons, clad in a completely battered up barrel, just swinging them around like a complete idiot. And look, your villain needs to feel dangerous. If some tosspot can ride around in a barrel, kill half your army, then, while half blind, just sort of go like this and kill even more, it just takes the viewer out of the movie and it doesn't make them feel like the characters are in danger, which is completely contrary to what you want them to feel, and what you want the viewers to feel like in a situation like that. I'm okay with the fact that Bomber is a pretty heavy fellow, but also quite kind of capable when it comes to things. I'm okay with that being sometimes used for comedic effect, that's fine. But it's, once again, my point of when it just kind of goes over the par, ridiculously so, then there's a problem. Now, there are other overuses of Bomber, especially there's one of him, like he's running away from a thing, and he's lagging behind because he's not as fast a runner, and then there's a thing that happens and he runs hyper quick, and it just feels like, you could have just let that scene go on without the stupid Bomber funny, and it would have been a great scene that would have really helped with the pacing of the movie, and would have made it feel great, but they didn't do that. They should have. So now, that's really some of the general points. Let's move on to the second part of the movie. I don't like the second part of the movie. It's fucking bad. So yeah, let's get into that. First of all, I think that Bard is really boring. He feels unnecessary and completely pointless in the context of his experience in this movie. He will be more relevant in the next one because, well, just story, which you already know. But yeah, he just feels unnecessary and pointless. The things that he does and the story around him, it just detracts from the story. Really, it's kind of sitting there taking in the viewer's attention and giving them nothing back because nothing interesting happens. So that's a problem. Also, I don't think that Luke Evans did a very good job of portraying the character. Now, when I say very good, I mean, he didn't put on a great performance. It wasn't bad, but it was just very, very much on par, boring, not that interesting. And while we are on the topic of Lake Town characters, let's move on to the Master, played by Stephen Fry. I think Stephen Fry's fantastic. I love his work. I think he's a really funny guy. He's really interesting. He's intelligent. He's great. I am pro Stephen Fry. Fantastic guy. But he was completely pointless in this movie. He was put in just because he's Stephen Fry. And now I know exactly what they were going for. The point of this character was supposed to be all, magnificent and very, big on his wealth and stuff like that. And, oh, Stephen Fry, Stephen Fry's acting style can really lend well to a character like that. The problem is I was never convinced that this was a proper character whose ideals were laughable, more that he was just a cheaply written, misplaced gag. Again, I just think bad pacing of the humor really was a problem with this guy. Also, Stephen Fry himself did not do anything for the character. It just felt like Stephen Fry was in the movie for no good reason and not really lending much of worth to the role or the thing as a whole. Just, yeah, not that good. Not very convinced by that performance. There's just some ridiculous things. I don't want to go into spoilers, but yeah, I don't think Stephen Fry was there for much good at all. There was also, I think, a bit of an issue where I know that his makeup was done to feel like it was kind of, he's this mismatched, raggedy leader who is lording over this completely decrepit town as if he was some king that's just completely, fashioned in jewels and stuff like that. But he really isn't because they're really not that wealthy. And I know that's what they were going for, but it just ended up to me looking like his makeup wasn't very well done. And that they were trying to make his makeup so that he felt misplaced, but instead of it just kind of feeling like that, and that's just a part of the character, it just actually felt like the makeup department didn't do a very good job. So I think there was a fine line there, and if it was walked, it would have been great, but I think they kind of fell off the tightrope and fell into the pit of ravenous wolves. So there's a problem with that. Now next, there is a clear disparity between what the movie is, I suppose. One part of it is all serious, with the epic music, the sweeping vistas, the great lines from characters like Thorin, and then there's the other comedic side, which is great if these two sides are married together into a cohesive experience. Instead, it feels like It feels like scenes were written so that there'd be funny scene, serious scene, funny scene, serious scene, instead of the whole thing just feeling kind of like a natural progression. It feels like they had a serious writing team and a comedy writing team, which of course they probably didn't, and it was more just a mistake on their part, but I think this is just a fundamental problem. It's as if the movie is completely confused as to what it is. I don't know, I feel like a lot of the humor in the first one was more fitting, I guess, with what was happening in a lot of cases. So yeah, there's a thing like that. Also, there is in my opinion, I think a bit of a disparity between the three character storylines, or the three main storylines that are going on during the last hour and a bit of the film. They just cut in a way that feels awkward, and I don't have much else to say about that other than it feels kind of awkward. Also, the end confrontation and battle sequence is very long, it's poorly cut, and it's just plain boring. You never feel like the characters are in danger because there's always a convenient dwarven contraption right nearby just to help them out, and it just all feels quite pointless as a whole. Smaug does not feel dangerous during the actual combat sequence. However, actually, this is one thing I forgot to mention in the positives: the whole interplay between Martin Freeman and Cumberbatch. The Bilbo Smaug thing, fantastic, brilliant line. It was right up there with the whole Gollum and Bilbo sequence from Unexpected Journey. Now anyway, back to the combat. So first, I get that Smaug is a giant dragon who is inside, but he is very serpentine and clearly very dexterous, which means that there are some things that just do not feel realistic given the bounds that the character should have. In terms of that combat scene. Now, the combat scene, yeah. I will go into more detail about that when I talk about spoilers, which will actually be kind of soon. So, yeah, I mean, that's really all the bad. I suppose I should probably mention, it's one of those movies where the ending, there is no ending. The ending doesn't have much build-up. It's really just one line where there's nothing to spoil, and I'm not going to spoil it, so actually I'm just going to shut up now and talk about it in the spoiler section in a minute. Yeah, now, overall rating, this one gets a 6 from me. It was an okay movie. I think that An Unexpected Journey was far better. Now, when I talk about numbers, this is not me giving this a 6 in that, oh, it's clearly better or worse than any movie that's ever got a 7 or anything like that. No. The way I give a rating is, in this one movie, in like in a black box, as one experience, what do I think about it? This is not me trying to compare it to what came before it or any other things. Just when I take in the pros, the cons, the good, the bad of this movie, what do I overall come out with? And for me, that is just a 6. If this movie had have continued on with the quality of the pre-Lake Town stuff, and the pre-Erebor stuff, all that, it just would have fared much better, in my opinion. There's far more good stuff happening before all that, and unfortunately, it just turns out that I didn't enjoy the second half of the movie, which is a bit of an issue. Now, spoilers, this will be a quick little section, but first of all, let's talk about Smaug. So the interplay between him and Bilbo was fantastic. Smaug felt massive and all-powerful, and like he could kill Bilbo at any second, and Bilbo felt like he was in a lot of danger, and overall, it was a very enjoyable scene. I saw a thing, actually, that the entire scene was unrehearsed between Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, and they kind of had chats about it on set for season 3 of Sherlock, and that definitely just comes off. The two of them have great interplay, and it's just a fantastic scene. Now, things do, of course, go downhill at the fight scene. First of all, it's very long. Lots of it was just simply uninteresting to me. And a lot of the times, like when there was a character in peril, there was a convenient MacGuffin. For example, a rope in midair pulling a minecart with a rope and pulley system. And there was always just the perfect item for the situation for most of the dwarves. And I get that stuff like that's expected. It's a movie, and not only is it a movie, it's The Hobbit. It's based off a children's story. I know it's more fantastical and a little bit less dark. I get that. But just Smaug does not come out right in terms of his combat abilities. There are so many times where he could have just flat out killed most of them, or had been, maybe if he'd have just taken a swipe instead of charging up his fire breath, they would be fine. And the party's plan of killing him was also really dragged out as well. The whole scene of turning on the bellows and getting the forge set up, it's just weight, it's not weight that adds anything, it just feels so dragged out. The sense of rush was also not there, and the characters just don't feel like they're really in any danger for a lot of it, which is unfortunate because you're fighting a giant dragon. Okay, so there's that scene. Now, also, I think there's just some general issues with it being dragged out. Now, overall, I am happy with the pacing of the plot, but it is definitely a little bit slow. And that said, I love the extended Lord of the Rings as an example. I'm okay with a slow plot as long as there's always interesting things going on. I think problems arise with characters like, well, mainly Bard. He kills Smaug in the next movie, right? But right now in this movie, he doesn't do anything of note. He's just a dude. And, yeah, he doesn't do anything that's interesting. He gets a lot of screen time, and there's no payoff there for the viewer, and I'm not really sure how they could overcome this issue. So it's a bit of an issue. Of course, yeah, how to say issue a million times in one sentence. But anyway, that's my overall sort of review, thoughts, all that stuff for The Hobbit, or for thingy of Desolation of Smaug. It was okay. Hopefully the next one will be better. I know in the next one we'll get the Assault on Dol Guldur, we'll get the Battle of the Five Armies, we'll get a few different battles, so that'll be nice, and at least they'll be fun to look at. They probably won't be adding in any more characters that won't get zero payoff, like Bard, because of course it'll be the last movie in the trilogy, so I think that's definitely a good thing. But yeah, overall, I'm really disappointed. I really loved the first Hobbit, and I was going in thinking, great, hopefully I'll just get something on par with this, I'm going to enjoy it, and that'll be that. Unfortunately, I didn't get that. Overall, though, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, and, you know, if you're just going to movies in general, it's probably worth watching. When it comes to humor, I'm extremely picky. I'll say, first of all, most of the time, I do not enjoy comedy movies. I'm kind of, a lot of the time when it comes to my media, I'm very much, OMGs must be serious. Which is fine, and you know what, I do love really well-paced humor. I thought the humor in the Lord of the Rings trilogy was fantastic, and I thought for the most part that the humor in Unexpected Journey was really good. So it's not like I just have this inherent problem with things being funny. I just didn't think that the way it was done in this movie was particularly good. It just felt really ham-fisted, I guess. But anyway, that's it for this video. I'm gonna go, I don't know, do something fun, like play... Actually, no, I'm not gonna do anything fun. I'm gonna go and write a fucking essay for a bullshit course with a really stupid lecturer who just doesn't, he knows nothing. It's so annoying, and he says so much dumb shit in the lecture. But yeah, it's what happens when they get this one guy with a this like arts degree, and they get him to teach everything to do with design. It's like web design, sure he can teach that. Game design, he can teach that too. But he's not really that good at any of it, and it's annoying when you not only do you feel like you know more than your lecturer, but like you just fucking do. Oh, it's annoying. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Holy crap, it was way longer than I thought it was going to go. But, hey, I guess I had some points to make. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.